Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan, and as always, we have Merriel Solesky here. Say hi, Merriel. Oh, looks like your mic's off.
Yo, how's it going, guys?
Well, we're getting towards the end of summer, and it's just hot outside. And what I mean by hot is the fishing's been hot too. So not only the temperature, but the fishing's been hot. I've been seeing a lot of your catches, a lot of our listeners' catches, and just reports in general. People are doing great out there. The trout bite's been on fire. There's some good, clean water coming in. I think I haven't seen a horrible day in the surf yet, as in for the beachfront conditions at least. It looks very wadeable for at least the last 2 weeks. I haven't seen any bad conditions, and I think that's equivalent that equates to good offshore fishing for you in a kayak. Am I right?
Yeah, that's one of the telltale signs that it's time to start heading offshore and catching some of these fish we don't get to catch year round that come in close.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Yeah, I think that we have a lot of listeners, especially after we talked to Blake a couple times, and I think he recently had his meetup in Corpus, and with all this nice weather, a lot of people are venturing out or are thinking about venturing out to offshore in their kayaks. It's definitely not something that, um, if you're inexperienced, that you should do, but if you have the opportunity and if you go with a good group of people, especially those who are experiencing it, highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's very challenging, a lot of fun, and I think Merrill, you're going to be talking a lot about that in this episode. But before we do, let's give a shout out to our sponsors. We have Knock and Tail Lures. They are go-to soft plastics. I've been catching a lot of trout on them recently, reds and flounder. If you're looking for a soft plastic that swims on the fall but has a built-in rattle that gives it an extra kick, definitely take a look at Knock and Tail Lures. Also, 4-Ray Printing. I know Aaron's out there, helping his kid do her FAA stuff. But if you're looking for stuff, custom gear such as his buff or towels, he'll help you out and get you hooked up. Also, definitely going to shout out to DSK, Dirty South Kayak Anglers, if you're looking for a group of kayakers on the Texas coast. Just not even Texas coast, just Texas in general, to talk kayaking and fishing with. Join Dirty South Kayak Anglers. You can search DSKA or Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook. Also, definitely want to give a shout out to Merrill's lovely wife, Brittany Solesky. If you're looking for real estate here in Houston, either commercial or residential, give her a shout. You can reach her at 281-740-0498 or brittanysolesky@gmail.com. And also, a shout out to our website. If you want to find our latest episodes, some blogs, some other content that we have posted out there, you can go to onelastcastpodcast.com. All right, Merrill, can you set the stage for us? I know we usually kind of do story time, but I want you to integrate this in. So I'm out there and I see flat, calm conditions. It's ice cream. I have the kayak. What am I doing?
You're packing up and you're going home. It's not
Ah,
right.
it's not right.
It's not blowing. I am not going. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, so those are ideal uh, positions or ideal conditions. Sorry, conditions to go offshore, right? Because you have to launch your kayak, and you don't want to launch your kayak when there's 2, 3, 4, 5 foot swells right at the breakers as you enter the beach to get offshore, unless you have a channel or something you can get through safely and get out in the water past the breakers, which that is some people do that. But you obviously usually when there's big swells, there's also big waves. Even offshore, there's big waves. So I'll probably talk about the story, what I've experienced recently, and then I'll go into the prep work that led up to it. So one of the trips was to Corpus. I head out to Bob Hall, launched out, and Bob Hall used to be a pier, and I like that place because when I used to go, I was really uh, successful in catching kingfish, cobia at the rigs. There was also snapper at the further rigs. I'd go out and drop my baits and speed jigs, and I'll show you which speed jigs and baits I'd use for that. And I'd catch snapper fish, legal snapper. And if you catch back what's still the same, you can catch 4 state snapper in state waters, and you could bring it with you versus 2 in the federal, which is past 9 miles. Um, and so it was a good time for me going to Bob Hall a lot, and I've seen a lot of things, saw a lot of bait. But recently, I've been going, and I haven't seen as much as activity, and I think it has to do a little bit about the pressure. I think it's getting more pressure, a lot more boats are going, and I think you know I'm just trying to analyze what I experienced, and I haven't been as successful going to Bob Hall that I used to go in years prior, a few years back. So what I did is I called my buddy Glenn, Professor Salt, right? Is that correct? Did I say that right? They call him Professor Salt,
Yep.
Glenn Madden. Yeah, yeah. And gave him a call because he fishes that area, or he knows a lot of that area. And usually when I ain't fished in the area in a while, I like to touch bases with my buddies that fish that area and ask for their intel and ask for their information. And that's one of the homeworks that I usually do. In this case, I didn't do that, and I just went out there, and I wasn't as successful. I think I hooked onto 1 kingfish out of had to be back in to for my looking at properties and whatnot side thing that I do. And so going there, coming back was quite a stretch for 1 fish. Usually have better days there. So typically, what I did was I looked at the weather maps, right, and see if they all aligned with a certain weather pattern. And with that weather pattern, I'm looking for lower winds, and I'm looking for a flatter surf. Something around 2 foot and below is kind of sometimes I'll do 2 and 3 if I really have an itch for it, but it's a little rough of a ride. With the lower winds, I would definitely go. So those are the 2 main things that I look at. And the apps that I use I still use Windfinder, even though it lets me down many times. Surfline, I use Surfline as an app to look at swells and wind and all that. So those are the things that I do for the weather conditions to prep for before I go. And if I see a window, then I plan for that day to go and hit the sand and then get ready to launch. Put all my stuff on my kayak, and then so one of the things I do before I hit the sand is I see the window. Okay, I know I'm going to go on this date, So then I try to plan out a couple days before. That way, I'm not. What I used to do is get ready the night before, and I always end up forgetting stuff. So I try to prep before. I make sure my radio's charged. I take a radio with me offshore. I try to find a buddy to go with me. Most of the times I can find a buddy, but sometimes during the middle of the week, it's tougher to find somebody to go with you offshore. And
Just for
so,
transparency, I've never been asked.
yeah, maybe you should go with me next time. Um, and this is one of the incidents, or one of the trips that I went to. And so I gear up. I check the kayaks, make sure it doesn't have any leaks, cracks, or anything like that. I do a visual inspection on my kayak. I make sure everything's working, my drive, my seat, which most of the times they are. But if I had any issues, I would deal with it not on the water. I've been in this situation where I made it on the water, and I was like, man, why didn't I check these things? So this is like a list of things that I've done so many things wrong that finally I got them right by doing them wrong. So I guess learning the hard way. Um, Make sure that I have all my baits ready to go. My rods and reels are, I kind of pull on the drags, pull on the line, make sure it sounds good. Do a little bit of reeling, check my baits that I know I'm going to use. If I'm targeting certain species like kingfish, I take certain baits. If I'm targeting snapper, sometimes I have it in the same bag, but my tarpon bag is always different. Sometimes I take it with me, sometimes I don't. Um, I was hoping to go out there and see some tarpon rolling, and then I would have said, "Screw the kingfish, I'm going for tarpon." But that wasn't the case. There was I didn't see any tarpon out there. Getting all my gear ready, make sure all that's ready, my PFD, my radio, make sure that some people do this. Maybe you guys can help me with this. Do y'all check in with the 16, the guards, the National Guard? Is that correct? 16, the Coast Guard. I'm sorry, the Coast Guard. So some people check in. I don't. If you do, I'd like to hear your comments on that part. But I always make sure channel 16 is working. I can hear some stuff going on. Yes, I do take. You're right. I do take Gorilla Tape. I do have a little box, so I have a Gorilla Tape in there. I have pliers, a little small screwdriver, a little small Phillips screwdriver. I have a red wire, a black wire in case of electronics, even though I don't have any electronics, but I have it in there anyways. I do have a little first aid kit to take that with me. So these are all the things that I check before. That way I'm not cramming the last minute to get everything ready before I hit the sand. So that trip, I go there, hit the sand, bulb haul, and once again, Windfinder was off by at least about a foot or so on the swells. So it was a little rough punching through it. Made it through. I didn't even hit the first rig, right? So Bob Hall has one rig that's really close by the Bob Hall Pier, and then it has a series of four. And if you look at it, the farthest one will say south is kind of linear with the middle one, and then they got one that's shorter, and they got one that's further out. No more than not even a quarter of a mile apart. These things are pretty close together. I was making my way downtown. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, it's a terrible song. Anyways, so I'm making my way, skip the first rig. I go straight towards the middle. And my whole game plan is to do the figure eight and go around it, figure eight, go around all the rigs doing the figure eight, going around until I see something. Or till I get a run or something. And I only got one run, one kingfish, no other runs. And I actually caught that on a Rapala. And I'll show that bait here in a little while. No. I'm sorry. No, I caught the Rapala. I caught in Freeport. Sorry, or Surfside. I caught that one on a ribbon fish. Special leader I use for a ribbon fish. It's an expensive leader, but it works for me. I like it. Pretty sure other people got it rigged a different way, but it's got a weight up front and then has a series of hooks that I hook the ribbon fish. So I caught it on a ribbon fish. Didn't get no hits on the Rapala. So I troll two baits usually. I'm just only comfortable trolling two. I don't like to have 3, 4, 5, or all kinds of crazy rods going out the back of my yak. Feel like two I can manage and handle, not stress about getting tangled up too bad or tangled at all sometimes. So caught one, came back, had some business I needed to take care of, came back home. Next day went to Freeport, or no, that was, anyways, next trip was Freeport. Launched off at Bryan. Didn't even make it to the rigs. There's a drop off. I think my buddy calls it, Blake calls it the fishing highway. I guess there's a drop off where fish run through a lot. He told me that there's one time he had a jack. He hooked onto a jack, and a great white bit half of the jack off. I don't know how I'd feel if I looked down with the GoPro or in the water and saw a great white shark. That's not likely for it to be in our base system. That's what he saw, and that's crazy. To me, that was like, wow. I don't think Blake is one to throw a fib. He's definitely a fisherman, but he don't fib. But great white, that's we don't see that in our waters a lot. Another thing we don't see is tuna, right? One time, I swear, I was in by the first rig in Freeport, and yeah, exactly, pucker up. That's clinched all the way, right? And I saw a good size tuna come up and blast baits. Might have been 6 miles out, and it's not typical for you to see some of these fish in our base system. 6 miles out, that's not ideal, but it happens. Caught an amberjack actually at the what is that one boat wreck that they have that's 7 to 9 miles out of Freeport or Vancouver, the Vancouver, right? So yeah, sometimes we get special prizes. Sometimes it happens, and it won't know until you go out. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to these fish, um, and you just get lucky and you get to experience things. You get to see things you never get to see before, and sometimes I took a recent picture of a whole bunch of triple tail underneath this piece of plastic, and I was like, man, I need to take a picture of this. Like, nobody's gonna believe me. I seen this much triple tail underneath this piece of plastic.
I
So
was
I
more wondering why you weren't
took that
casting
picture
into
and I
it.
shared it on my Facebook and thought that was pretty cool. To
Did
me,
you
that
cast
that
into
that
it?
made my trip worthwhile. Seeing that there, I don't see that much. I don't target triple tail, and to see that many triple tail, that was pretty cool. So yeah. Anyways, didn't even make it out to the rig. Caught.
Looks like we
Think.
lost you for a second.
Oh yeah, no worries. I was talking too much, wasn't I?
No, I don't know what
Anyways,
happened, but I
yeah.
was
So
actually asking, I saw the pig. Did you cast into it?
no, didn't even
Why?
bother.
Why not?
And the funny thing is, I had a small rod and reel with the little bait on it. They were actually coming up to the kayak, coming underneath the kayak. Um, it's just one of those things where I just enjoyed it, and I didn't want to bug them and catch one for what, and then take a picture and throw it back. I wouldn't. I was only there to catch kingfish, and a buddy of mine wanted a kingfish. I got one for myself, and he wanted one, so went out got him one. And it's just one of those things. To me, it wasn't about catching one. It was just enjoying what's out there.
No,
I
I
mean,
get it, but still,
you should have
um,
cast on it, right? Yeah,
you
I guess.
should have casted on it.
Man,
Um,
I've been in several situations, man, where I'm fishing and then I see something and I should have like I should have fished or cast or did something or set the hook, and I'm just like, wow, that's just beautiful. Or that's amazing, and I
no,
just enjoy it.
I totally respect and understand that, but maybe it's because um, uh, this is where I say I totally respect what you say, but you're wrong. But
It's okay. It's okay. Maybe I should have. And I felt like they were kind of small, anyways, right? They were a
yeah,
little too small for me for even if I try to catch one, they're a little too small for me to take home. Why even hook onto them? Unless they were trout, right? I'll catch dinks all day,
yeah.
um, but yeah, so and then plus, heading in, got stuff to do, take care of, and so yeah, I never made it out to the rigs out in Freeport or Surfside or whatever that rig is right there. Just made it past the um, just to the where the Michael. I don't know if that's the same Michael that messaged me. He was out there fishing and asked where I was. I didn't make it out to the rigs, but I made it to where the drop off was. Caught that one, came back. Short day. Um, and yeah, that was it. Came back. I caught that one on a Rapala. And about so how I found that drop off is not by a fish finder or anything. I was trolling, right? Trolling towards the rig, and then boom, got a hit, kingfish. I was like, man, I'm not even close to the rig. I'm halfway between me and the rig, and boom, kingfish. So I was like, all right, that's something to remember. And when you go out to the rig and you come back, most of the times you're fighting current. The current's super strong. Takes for a long day. And you see schools of big schools of kings. Not kings, sorry, jacks. I always see jacks, big schools of jacks. One time I saw them of stingrays, right? Stingrays, a whole bunch of small schools of stingrays going down there. Always big schools of fish going down this area, and you could see them from the kayak as you're looking down, or going underneath the boat, or it's a pretty cool sight. And then, sure enough, trolling back, another time that I went, um, caught a kingfish on the way back in. Um, that's happened 3 times, including the third time being recently in that one spot. So I guess that drop off paid off. Fish just moving in, and I get real lucky in that area. So if you're out there trolling fishing, go ahead and drop those baits a little early. What I used to do is drop the baits when I got closer to the rigs because I didn't want to catch jacks or sharks. Like, this is not it for me. I rather catch kingfish or other fish. They're fun to catch. Jacks are fun to catch. Don't get me wrong. Sharks are too. They put up a great fight. But when you're in a kayak getting drug around by 8-9 foot shark, that'll wear you down and take up most of your time. And speaking of sharks, this definitely a tool that I use when I'm fishing for sharks. Put this in their mouth, or even the kingfish, anything with sharp teeth. I use this right here. This is Landers makes them. There's a lot of other companies that make them. I got a Landers leash. I clip that to a floating device, so if it goes overshore, it floats. I think I've lost easily over 5 to 10 pairs of pliers and different things that I use on the boat. I think he even posted a video, right? Me using that one on a shark, and he does a spin move, and the hook comes out. But yeah. So yeah, that was pretty much my 2 times going off and prepping. And as I come in, that's another challenge, right? Coming in, I think that's the toughest part of the fishing trip is landing your kayak. Sometimes I don't take the sock with me, but a sock really helps tied to the back of your kayak, about 50 feet, back behind you. If you don't have one, what I like to do is look for where the waves are crashing less and the current's kind of pulling out. I guess you would call that the rip tide. I actually try to find, when I'm looking down the beach and the waves crash, I look for where it goes inwards and most of the waves come forward. I look for the shoreline where the rip current is, and I take the rip current out. Same thing with coming in. I try to come in on the rip tide, where there's more current going out than the water coming forward. You can see that on the front of the beach line. You'll see a big old bite mark.
Nope, it looks like we lost Merrill again. I'm just taking notes here because offshore is kind of Merrill's thing. I haven't been offshore in a while, and I think I've said that multiple times on the show. But it's the times that I have been out. It's just a lot of fun to be out there and to the inshore. You kind of know what you're getting, and for the amount of times I fished, just big trout really excite me. But out there, you don't know what you're gonna get. Even if you deep drop, like next to a rig, you could end up with a really nice snapper, and then get it, like Merrill said, get a species that you normally don't see. And I think I've said this story a few times in previous episodes, but probably about a decade ago, we had some really flat, calm water for multiple days, like I think a couple weeks actually. And it was clear and basically blue to the beach. A lot of seaweed though. We picked our way through after a morning trout session in the surf. We picked our way through the gunk, and we saw and caught some mahi uh, with inside of the pleasure pier. So it's you just never know when you get out there. Um, Merrill, you're back. Looks like you're having some internet issues.
Yeah, something I got to work out again. Uh,
But I think this is a good opportunity to kind of. Um, you mentioned some very interesting things, and I didn't want to interrupt while you were kind of reminiscing about your recent trips. So for me, the one of the biggest challenges, and I think you addressed this very early. The one reason why I don't go offshore anymore is because of my previous kayak situation where I had a crack in my kayak. I fixed it, but I never felt really safe. So I guess what what specific things are you looking for whenever you are inspecting your kayak before you head out? You briefly touched on it, but I kind of want to get more information about that.
right. So I'm looking for places where it would crack. Right. Like sometimes. So I'm in a Hobie, depending on my Hobie. Sometimes where you put your drive in, it could crack there. Where the scupper holes, it could crack there. Where the seats is, and then when you flip it on the back, on the bottom side, I kind of look along forward and back. Another thing that I do is once I make it past the breakers, I always look in the whole hatch and right in front of me. So there's no bucket or nothing right there. There's just straight to the hole. So I always open that up, and I have a hand pump with me. If I do catch on water, if I start getting water, I could pump that out and then hurry and book it back to shore. So I kind of, once I make it past the third breakers, I'll probably go out a little bit more. And then I'll just keep an eye on that hatch. I'll keep opening that hatch, make sure I'm not taking water. And that's happened to me before, right? Me and Victor Cisneros been out there where we're on the Tandem Island, and I'm sitting in water in the back of the kayak. I'm like, bro, I don't think this is normal. And he's like, oh, so he's like, nah, you're fine, you're all right. And he had his little motor thing, and I'm like, dude, I don't think this is right. And then he looks behind, he's like, oh crap, and sure enough, we had a hole where the drive went in, and where his drive went in. So we had to pump that out, stick a cork in one of those cork. He had a piece of cork. He stuck it in the hole, and we made it back in. So like things like that, from my experiences, teaches me to always look in those certain situations. And as I'm making it out that way, I rented a kayak. Another incident is I rented a kayak from a friend, and I took it offshore, and it was taking on water inside the kayak. I didn't know where the water was coming from, but I knew, hey, look, I just made it past the third breaker, and I got this much water inside. So quickly turned around. No fish is worth it. No fishing trip's worth your life. Came back in, uh, dropped the kayak back off, landed it, loaded it up, took off. So those are the things that I look for, making sure my kayak ain't taking on water. Did that answer your question? Or?
No, that did, and I think that's a good practice, and also uh, the what you're looking for is also should be standard practice for those of you who are looking um, for those of you who are looking to buy a used kayak is checking those areas and the scupper holes, the drive area, and anything like that. Those high wear areas to see if you can find any damage. Uh, Mainly because those areas are going to um, those areas will are the areas where you just need to look and make sure that there's no damage there. A crack in a scupper hole is kind of a death sentence for a kayak. Um, Nowadays, you can definitely figure out ways to not to fill those and make those right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I think we lost him again. But yeah, those areas are definitely the high high stress areas where if you have a crack in them, I wouldn't touch the kayak. So it makes sense that those areas are the ones you look. Make sure that you don't have anything happening there, and just be safe. Um, I think Steven, in the chat right here, which by the way, we are live every other Tuesday, or we try to be. We've been kind of slacking lately, just life happens. Steven has a comment, once you have water above the Hobie rudder lines, you will be filling fast. That's totally true. I know the older style Hobie Outback, not Outbacks, yeah, Hobie Outfitters, the tandem. So they have the Oasis and the Outfitter. Those are the two. At the time, there were just the two tandem models that they had. Also the Kona, but that one's just the paddling one. The Outfitter sat real low to the water and had a lower weight capacity compared to the Oasis, but people saw that and ignored it. And generally, of course, usually put the stronger person in the back for whatever reason. That's it's a holdover from paddling days, but usually the bigger person sits in the back, and that didn't really bode well for the Outfitter because usually that put the water line closer to the rudder lines, and that allowed people in the Outfitter to take on water. So just a little tidbit there. Um, but yeah, it's excuse me. Um, Another question we have from Michael is asking about a drift sock when coming through the breakers. My understanding, I've never used a drift sock before in the breakers, but my understanding is the reason why you use it is to slow yourself down. When coming through the breakers, one of the things is if you go in too fast, you lose control, and then you lose control, you get sideways and you flip over, you turtle. So the drift sock provides a little bit of resistance and helps you control your your speed when coming in. That way, that you have full control whenever you come in. Um, Merrill, are you back with us, or is you still having internet problems? I don't think I can hear you, so I'll just keep talking. So whenever you can figure it out, Merrill, you can hop back on. But anyways, so one of the biggest things that I found for offshore is they have all these lures out there. I've tried like the Russells and the Rapalas. Um, they work real well, and it's just a matter of figuring out the speed that that you have to troll at. And I think Merrill wanted to really talk about that later. Is is the speed of which you troll, because that's something that you have to do kind of trial and error, and how you figure that out while you're on the water. Yeah, it's just by just tossing it out there and figuring out like how to do that. Um, Another one is like the Rapalas. We also have those really giant like slab spoons. Basically anything shiny. I think I remember when I first started working at Academy years ago when I worked in retail, and I knew nothing about the offshore aisle, and it was kind of daunting because you saw all these things. You saw these pre-rigged giant squids. You saw like these I knew about rattle traps, but then I didn't know that they made like these, you know, 2, 3, 4 ounce rattle traps, these giant rattle traps. Um, and then of course like the Russell lures at when they had them at Academy, they were weird. They just looked like a piece of metal that somebody just bent in shape, and that was the Russell lure. And I'm like, how do you even use this? Um, Merrill, have you finally joined us back?
Yeah, I think I had to log off and then come back on.
Yeah.
And it seems like it works better now. Yeah, so I like to share. This is one of my favorite baits. This one right here. This is the one I tried. This is not the lure I caught the king on. It's on my yak and it's got gnarly teeth marks all over it. This is more of a cleaner one. I think it's only been hit once, right? But this is a 130 max Halco. I say Rapala. It's a Halco lure. I do have. And then this is the knot that I use, right? So let me see if I can get close to the camera. And that's like a double loop knot that I use. And when I do that the reason I do that is so I could just clip on to my clip. And the clips that I use are usually 190-pound clips. So it can take on a lot of weight. And same thing, that same knot's on this eye right here. So this is one of my favorite baits. And if I'm feeling like there's a lot of fish, I'll go even bigger to try to catch the bigger ones. This is a 190 max Halco lure. These are my favorite ones I like to troll. These baits, when they're blowing up on the top, I had to get a new one. The other one that you can't even see it; it's all red because it's been hit so much. But I like to use this popper. Um, this is my favorite when they're blowing up on the top by the rigs. I like to throw that. I like these lures to troll if I want to troll high side, like they're still on top. This dives right below the water, and man, this thing is really good to look at when it's just right below the water, even when you're trolling it. My favorite color is the blue one, but I got to put new hooks on it due to heavy usage. I got to change out the hooks on them. I think I got missing one of the hooks on it, and then the other one's bent. So changing out the hooks on that. And then if I'm trolling ribbon fish, these are the baits that these are the lures that I like to troll with. Actually, let me show you one. Oh, actually, this is. So these are the baits, and it's got this head, this jig head. And let's take it out of the box.
Yeah.
There's no interruptions, right?
No, no, no. Take it out that way I can see it because it's kind of glare from the bag.
Oh, right. So yeah, these are like expensive, but man, they work.
Define
Um,
expensive.
$13 a rig, or they're probably 15 now. But I bought a lot back then, because they're good, and I'm running low, running real low. I think I'm down to like a handful. So how this works is this right here goes back and forth on the leader, right?
Oh.
And it goes all the way to the hook part where you hook onto the ribbon fish. So this part will troll like this. I'll hook this part, this hook, underneath coming up. This goes on the top of the head, the second one. And I put just a little slack, and this hits about the middle part of it, the ribbon fish. So the whole time it'll be trolling like this, like a ribbon fish. And it's not twisting, it's not turning, it's not doing crazy stuff. It's just a ribbon fish just going through the water with this trailer on it, this skirt on it. Pink's my favorite color, but I'm out of pink. They're all gone. Down to my blues and neon greens. But those are the ones I like to use for ribbon fish. You could do something like this, which is the same thing, and put like an egg weight in the front, right? And let that slide up and down. You'll have a swivel and your egg weight, and that can slide up and down. And what that does is that keeps the ribbon fish a little bit further down instead of on top of the surface. A lot of people like to troll it on top. That's fine. Sometimes you get to see, even with these top baits that you're trolling, you'll get to see the kingfish hit your bait and come up out of the water 20, 30 feet up in the air. And that's pretty cool to see. Um, I know I got a lot of questions about the baits that I use, and those are the main baits that I use. And then if I'm targeting cobia, I'm using something like this little bucktail with the trailer on it. I think I got one. Here we go. So it's got a same thing, bucktail with the little trailer at the end. Got
It's a
a
little
mono
curly tail
leader.
grub.
Yeah, and then I got a mono leader right here, and I usually do about 80-pound test. And all these have loops on them, right? So that way I just hook onto the clip and go. And for me, that makes it real easy, right? So I'm not sitting there tying all these knots and getting ready. It's like boom, take one bait off, tie the other one on. All of my lures already got pre-leaders on them with that circle knot that I use, that double circle knot. So then I clip onto the clips, and I'm ready to go. These I chunk at the rigs, or if I cobia around, I'm chunking this bait right here. Kingfish, I'm trolling those other ones. I think my buddy Mike got lucky, and he was trolling a Rapala, and he got a cobia, a really nice size cobia. Congratulations to him. Um, but yeah, so this is I'll be getting out there more often. So if you guys kind of want to know what baits that I use, those are the baits that I use. And yeah.
Yeah. So
um,
one of the questions I'm kind of going back up and looking at some of the questions that we've had in the chat. Um, Fidencio is asking like, what's a good kayak to go offshore in? Um, so I'll start off while you kind of get put stuff away. Uh, Basically, I don't I don't value stability offshore mainly because I find like I would find I would be hesitant to take a pro angler offshore because if you do happen to flip it, it's going to be difficult to flip it back over. Um, and also, I find that having a platform that's stable, which generally doesn't paddle well, can become a liability when launching off the beach. Um, that's just a personal opinion. I know plenty of people who launch who use like pro anglers and the autopilots and these wide stable platforms. Um, Generally, if I for me, if I was just starting out, something like a Tarpon 140, even a 160 would be an ideal platform. Not the easiest thing to from a stability standpoint, but it will cut through the waves real well. It'll get to your location real quick. Um, and then from there, they have specially designed kayaks like the Jackson Kraken. I know that one cuts through waters really well. It's a Kraken 13.5. Um, and then one of the things that I do like about a pedal or pedal kayak compared to a paddle is that the once you get to further out where you can use your pedal system, whether it be a prop driven or a the fin style such as the Hobie, you should be okay. There's always exceptions to it, so that kind of helps mitigate some of that. Uh, I know they don't really make the Revo 16 anymore, but that's something that was out there. A 13 would be fine. I haven't put my links out there. I know Joshua Johnson, one of the guides here, he does his links and he's taken it offshore a few times. That seems like a good platform, but well, I guess one of the major things is that you just got to be comfortable with what you're taking out there. Um, what are your thoughts, Merrill?
I do take a PA, 360 PA 14. I take that because I used to be a Outback guy, right? I love my Outback. I get there, zoom around, get fast. I think being fast on stealthy on the water does help. Whatever you're comfortable in, really, that's the honest truth. Whatever you're, when you go offshore, if you don't feel comfortable in your kayak, that's not the one. I know guys that are like comfortable in the Old Town, and I know guys that are comfortable in the those what is Stealth? What are those skinny ones? What
Yep.
is Glenn fish out of? And he's fast in that sucker. So it's whatever you're comfortable in. The reason I would probably choose an Outback is I like the Outback, but when I was in the Outback and I saw a shark that was bigger than my kayak, wider than my kayak, and I've been in situations where a tarpon's going crazy by the kayak, and in a little kayak you don't feel comfortable, and that's one of the things where I didn't feel comfortable. When you have a 100+ pound fish shaking his head right next to you and he's just as big as your kayak, you don't feel comfortable. In the PA 14, I felt comfortable targeting fish, and I don't feel like I'm on the food chain when I'm in that kayak. I feel like I'm a little bit bigger of a guy, bigger of a piece of plastic, bigger vessel. So I feel a lot more comfortable in that. Um,
I mean, that's a good point. So I didn't really consider that, and like I said, I'm not the offshore guy here, and I haven't been out in a long time.
no, man,
So
I get it. No, there's a lot of people love the Outback. A lot of people love the smaller kayaks, but it's just that's the situation I was in, and it changed my perspective in my mind that I'd rather be in a bigger kayak offshore just so I'm a bigger person. Landing it's a little bit more difficult. Launching it's a little bit more difficult. But overall, when I'm out there, I feel a lot more comfortable on the water. So, I mean, if I wasn't such a scary cat and I didn't see that big old shark that was bigger than me, then I'd probably still be in the outback. It was a hammerhead, right? It's not likely for them to attack. I think there's like 17 since 15 something that's been reported. 1580 or I mean, it's very rare a hammerhead shark's gonna attack somebody, but man, their bodies are huge. They're big and they're massive, and that kind of got me nervous. So
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to psych myself up about going out there, and and we talk about like sharks bigger than the kayak and all that. So
yeah. See, right, I'm in a 12-foot kayak, and he was. I don't want to exaggerate, but I felt like he was bigger than the kayak. He was definitely wider than the kayak. And what is an Outback, like 32,
it's
34,
32.
somewhere,
Yeah,
32,
yeah.
and he was easily bigger than my kayak, long wise too. And I was like, man, that is one big shark. Um, yeah. As, yeah. So yeah. One thing I wanted to talk to you before the time's up is the drag that I set for different fish. And I feel like there's not enough YouTube videos, or they always say that always seems some kind of like answer that doesn't really answer it, right? How to set your drag. And the drag that I use was a conglomerate of a lot of mistakes, right? I made so many mistakes, and this is what actually works for me. Um, if I'm
By the way,
targeting,
the perfect answer always comes from a lot of mistakes. So
yeah. So, example, right? When
yeah,
trolling offshore, I had the drag locked tight for a bait like this, right? It also depends on what bait you're using, right? Or if I'm targeting kingfish, right, and I have a bait like this, and I had the drag locked down. When he hits it, if he hits it a certain way and that it's not quite in his mouth right or something, and I barely catch the fish, and my drag's locked tight, boom, it's gone. That's what it felt like, right? I'd get a good run, and then boom, the bait's off. Man, I missed it, and that happened a lot. So those are lost opportunities. So I was like, all right, well, I'll do the opposite next time. I'll dial down my drag all the way, very, very low. And what I was getting was the same situation where they'll run around a little bit and then the hook comes out because the hook never really set inside him correctly. The drag was so loose that if he was hooked, he could shake it off and then the bait was on. At least that's how I felt it on the rod. What
looks like we lost Merrill again. Merrill gotta pay the internet bill, but yeah, no, keeping that drag set to that right, whatever it should be, it's really important because, like Merrill is saying, that if you have it too loose, they have an opportunity. You're not going to dig that hook in, especially to some of these, pelagics out there with stronger mouths or more tougher mouths, so that you're not going to dig the hooks in. Have it too tight, and some of those strikes, kingfish, they strike hard, and I've heard that when they'll break those hooks if you're not careful. So I think we got Merrill back. Let's see. Is that right? Where if you have it too hard, they'll bend the hooks and they'll just
Oh
straighten
yeah,
them out.
for
Yeah,
sure. Yep. Yeah, I've lost a lot of hooks that way. You'll get back a bait with the missing hook on it. What I mean by a missing hook is some these pieces right here on this treble hook. One of these will be missing, or two of them will be missing, or these will be bended, or this will be bended, vice versa. Um, and so what I've learned is when I set my drag, I make sure that I pull it on my rod or on my reel that where it's enough to where the hook can set and stay, and I don't mess with the drag. Some people are like, okay, he's hooked for good. I'm going to tighten it, crank it down a little bit, bring him in faster. I have done that, and I've done that when there are sharks around, right? When I bring him close to the kayak and I notice there's a bull shark or some other sharks following him, I will crank down the drag, hurry up, bring him in, gaff him. And this is the gaff that I use. I use a gaff like this with a protection on this and slide that off and expose that. This whole thing comes off, but it's a little rusty, but it's been used. Uh, and
you know, I
so
was
that's the
actually
only
thinking.
time. That's the only time I'll try to gaff them, hurry up, or crank down the drag and bring them in. But usually I set the drag just enough for where it sets the hook and it stays. To me, I feel like that's I would want to say 10, 10 to somewhere around the 10 to 15 pound range of the hook, yeah, of the pull of the drag. What that means, if you tie a 10 to 15 pound bait to it and you pull it up, it's just enough and it just starts pulling the drag. Um, what do you? I think that's about right? Just a 10 pound pull, 10, 8 to 10 maybe. It's just enough. You'll feel it right. You'll have a good feel for it. Like it's tight enough to set the hook, but it's not too tight where it yanks the hook out. And I think that's important for kingfish, right? If I'm fishing for tarpon and I'm trolling coon pops, I got my drag cranked down a little bit tighter, maybe closer, almost. I got it more than a little tighter. That way, when they hit those circle hooks on those coon pops, they're on. And if they're running, they're on. They ain't going nowhere. So now all I got to do is just keep reeling, and that's been more successful for me. Once again, for making a lot of mistakes. That's
Yeah.
how I set my drag. It's the same concept as inshore. You don't fish for trout the same way you fish for redfish and flounder. At least I don't. What about you?
I just lock my drag all the way down.
Even on trout.
If I get it, I get it. But yeah, it makes sense. And actually, that reminded me, a few years ago, I did a tuna trip out of California in San Diego. And my cousin who lives out there, he's the one who introduced me to it. And then the day before we went out, he was prepping his gear, and he basically has um, almost like a luggage. It's like a scale that you use to weigh your luggage. You can hold it up, and it kind of goes, and it points out to like how many, how many pounds your luggage is. But it was on a smaller side, and he attached. He has a setup. He has his reel, and he's basically fine tuning his drag, so that whenever he like you said, he locks it down, he knows how much pound um, of drag that thing has. And I think it was like he set it for um, he was setting it so he had a certain number on like on the quarter drag, half drag, 3/4 drag, and full drag, and he was making fine tuned adjustments for it. And basically, he's like, whenever we're using live bait on this trip, and you just basically free lining it, and you're just watching your spool, and it runs out. And he's like, whenever you go for that, whenever it starts peeling off, don't go full drag right away. Go like, half drag. And of course, if it's a big fish, you may need to crank it up a little more from that. But to go half drag first, just to get that hook in him, and then you'll figure it out from there.
Right.
So I think that's very interesting to hear that, and it makes sense that they all you just use different, you know, different pound, drag for different fish.
Right.
You have
Right.
it fine tuned, I should say.
Right. No, that and that's what's worked for me. Right. You guys find something that works for you. But I made a lot of mistakes. I lost a lot of fish, and that's due to error, right? I'm not going to be one of those guys that go out there and say everything I do is perfect, because it's not. I still make mistakes. We all
Yeah.
make mistakes. I feel like every day on the water, I feel like I'm learning something new or experiencing something new, and
That
and I don't mind.
that's what
Go
makes
ahead.
it good. That's
Yeah,
what makes it good.
and I don't mind touching bases with people that are in that area and fish that area. I still call people up and, hey man, how's it going over there? I'm heading that way. Got any tips or pointers? Or if I'm having a bad day, I'll call them afterwards and ask them, man, you know what's going on in this area? That was one of the cases after I got off the water. I called Professor Salt and said, hey man, this is not typical for Bob Hall or anything. And he gave me good advice. One of the advice was a lot of boat traffic. There's a lot more pressure, a lot more boat traffic, and those kingfish. They won't. They're not aggressive around those motors and those boats. So, and then a lot of pressure from the boats kind of just made that area not as fun as it used to be. And I'm
Right.
not knocking boats or anything. It's just,
Yeah,
you know,
it's part of the game. I
right.
before the show, you were talking about how boat traffic can affect it, and I definitely want to bring up that conversation because my experience with I obviously I'm not it just in general for me. I think boat traffic is a thing, and it definitely can affect a fish, but I think it affects us more than it affects the fish. Um, Mainly because it changes how we fish, especially being in a kayak where you're not, our area is limited to, however far we can paddle or pedal, or however far our motor can take us, which is definitely not as far as a boat can take us. So, one of the blessings and the curses of a kayak is, in the areas that we go to, we're going to learn it real well because that's as far as we can go. But also, usually can't go any further. So, whenever you're constrained because, oh, there's so many boats, and I can definitely say this about like the pass and San Luis Pass for trout. There's a lot of boat traffic out there. There are certain things that I found that I want to do, but I can't do because there's a boat sitting over here and I can't maneuver the way I want to. I can't sit in the middle of a channel and cast towards a sandbar or bring it down because I'm impeding the way to navigate. Or it's more like I don't want to get run over. So, um, I can't sit on the edge like I want to,
That's
and
right.
and cast into the channel because I especially right when the sun comes up, their boats are running through there, and I've had a couple close calls where they'll run over my line or they don't see me. So I can imagine that's the same, whenever you're out there having all these boats running around, you're not going to be trolling as quickly, or you're not going to be trolling in the areas that you want to be. So generally, to make it short, um, I think with the more boat traffic out there, it's really more affects a lot of what we do on the water than what's actually happening with the fish. So, um, I have a question from Stacy out there. How many miles offshore do you go, and how long does it take till you get to the rig? Um, I think previously what Merrill said, which I think we lost him again. Um, but previously what Merrill said is that generally he doesn't have to go to the rig. Depends on where he's at, and and if he's in Corpus, he's going to try to go to Bob Hall. So that one's not that far off. I think Bob Hall is roughly around 3 or so miles offshore, maybe a little bit more than that. Uh, but like somewhere in Freeport where you don't have to go all the way to the rigs because they're just areas that that are closer, that the drop offs that he was talking about. Meryl, just answering Stacy's question: how many miles offshore do you go, and how long does it take you to get to the rig?
Yes. Depends if I'm tired. No. So if I'm heading off of Bob Hall, there's one that's 1 point something miles
Okay, it's
off
much
the
shorter
first
than I
rig.
thought it was.
If I'm heading out of Freeport, that one's 5 miles. Um, the Vancouver, that one's like 7 point something, depending where you launch. Where I launch off, it's actually 9 miles. Um, because I head to the rig and then I go that way. Um, so it depends on your route that you take. I think the furthest one's 5 miles from Bob Hall, the first one, and the other one's maybe 4 miles, 3 miles. Um, so the journey that I took, the way I was zigzagging and going around, that one was a total of 7 miles there and 5 miles back. So yeah, so it's definitely a long stretch. The one this morning, I don't even think I made it to like 3 miles, and then I caught that one and came back. So I didn't make it to the rig, Stacy, but that one's 5 miles where I hooked up.
And I guess on a,
Yeah.
on a good day, how long does it take for you to get out there? Because you're contending with current and all that too.
Right. So I for both of them, getting there is the easy part, and coming back is always the hard part. I feel like I'm fighting current all the time on the way back. And that's the routes that I take, I'm guessing. So if you have a motor, it'll make your life a lot easier, right? You have a trolling motor or any kind of motor, it'll make your life a lot easier there and back. And that's why a lot of people like in the old town or kayaks with the motor, they very minimal effort there and back. The hardest part is launching or landing. So Yep. Hopefully, that answered your question. Um, hey, I wanted to do like a giveaway, like a solid, like a really really good upscale reel for our listeners that can send us fish pictures that I would like to post, like, when we're on that wait. You know how we have
Yeah,
pictures of ours. I feel like those are old pictures. I mean,
they
I want
are.
some of the listeners.
I think we lost him again. Yeah, this has been a very interesting show. A lot of technical difficulties that we're having here, but it's still a lot of good information if you can brave through it. Um, when Merrill comes back, I think he'll talk more about what that giveaway will be. But I definitely do want to iterate that um, what he's talking about. If you do send us pictures, and we have them back here. Yeah, I guess if you send us pictures, you get one entry per person. And what are they going to win, Merrill?
A high end Shimano reel, and I'll let them pick between. When I mean high end, it's not going to be a $100 reel. It'll be a little bit higher than that.
You heard it here.
But
He's giving away a Stella. I'm kidding.
yeah. So either a spin or bait caster or conventional for offshore if you want. So those get there up there in price, and yeah, I want to do a giveaway like that.
Yeah,
And sorry about the internet connections. I'll get that fixed on the next podcast. We didn't have any issues on the pre show, which we test everything out. But today it's not a good day, even with high speed
yeah.
internet.
It's not a problem. I for those of you who are listening right now, what I'm going to do for you listening live on our show, and basically that means that I've seen your comments, so I know that you're here. Um, Yeah, basically, for those of you who are watching and haven't commented, comment because I'll give you an extra entry just for being here right now. But for those listening later, um, send us your pics. Just send them to either message us via Facebook or One Last Cast Podcast at gmail.com. Either one of those, and let's say I'm gonna leave it open until the end of August. Would that work, Merrill?
Now let's do like a little bit longer. I want a lot of entries. I want
Okay.
enough to
You want
fill up. I got a
mid
good two,
September?
3 minutes. End of September. That's a good one.
End
End
of
of
September?
September.
Okay. End of
Yeah.
September. So you can either message us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/1 last cast podcast, or you can email us at one last cast podcast at gmail.com. Send us your pictures. No matter how many pictures you send, you'll just get one entry. Um, and Stacy, I already got you. I thank you for um, thank you for sending your pics like a couple months ago. We've like I said, I've been slacking real bad. Um, we'll get that up, um, and just send us your pics, and we'll that gives us permission to integrate that into our kind of opening slide that we have, and so that's basically to keep us in a legal standpoint, Merrill. What's the dollar amount that you're going to be putting on this reel? um, just so that somebody doesn't actually come asking you for Stella and get mad that you didn't give them a Stella.
Oh, okay. So whatever I could find on sale. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever I could find on marketplace. No. So I'm thinking a higher end spin caster, probably in like $200-300 range, like a Vanford or what is the one that's really close to Stella and the components.
I'm thinking Vanford. They have the sustain.
Sustain. No, not the
Yeah,
sustain. Is it the sustain that's close to it on the components?
I don't know. They've been. You're already above a Stratic, and I don't. That's too rich for me. So
No worries. I'll do some research on that one. So somewhere around the $200 to $300 range
yeah.
on, I guess, on the spin and bait caster.
Okay.
Conventional would be around $300, somewhere around there too. A good conventional like a Talica or you know something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, up to $300. Um, you know, and yeah, just send us your pictures again. If you send it to us, you can message us at facebook.com/one last cast podcast, or you can send us an email on at one last cast podcast at gmail.com. We'd be entered to win a reel valued up to $300, and we'll go from there. But thanks Merrill for helping us do with get. It's always better if you have nice gear. So
Right, right. Yeah, no, for sure. Man, I appreciate the nicer gear, especially when the drag's ripping and screaming and you're on the salt water a lot. You appreciate the better components. Um, Stella is one of my favorite reels, not because of the price, because the way it handles the salt water and it doesn't mess up, like some of the other reels that I've used in the past. And it's just hold strong in salt, and you're paying for it. You get what you pay for in that aspect.
yep.
And I just love hearing that drag scream on that reel. It never gets old for me.
It's been a while since I've heard a good drag scream. I've been to be honest, I've been fishing late, not as much as I've been wanting to, but the last time I went out, we had a real tough day, um, and we were out there until probably like 1 or 2 o'clock, and probably had 4 or 5 good bites,
Mm,
good thumps the whole day. Um, my buddy who I was with, he had like two. My dad, who I was with, he had one. It was a tough day. I didn't look at the tides. We were out in San Luis Pass. Didn't look at the tides until I got there, and I realized we had right when the morning came up, that the sun came up. We had a freak storm blow through. Like wind, apparently the wind got up to like 60 miles an hour. We hunkered down in our car, and then we came back out, and I checked the tides at that point, and I realized it literally was flat all the way up until like 3 o'clock. So we had like no tidal movement. Like it was literally zero from like 8 o'clock until like 3, and
that doesn't
it was
help you in that
no, it
area.
doesn't help. And it was funny because it was I think I did check the night before, and I quickly read, oh, it's like a 4 tide day.
Mhm.
But the tides was nothing. So
Yeah,
um it was a pretty bad day.
yeah, moving like half an inch, right,
Yeah.
in half an inch out, right.
And
Uh,
it was kind of um it was real funny too, because like right after that storm blew through, it was gorgeous. You had this rainbow, the sun was coming up, it was still kind of sprinkling a little bit, so, and it was like glass calm. I'm like, man, this looks amazing. um and it just sucked. So at least it looked nice. um, Stacy, I know. I saw on her Facebook that I think they were fishing the surf, and that storm blew through, and the tide kind of came up a little bit during the storm, and like their rod holders on the beach got swamped and all that stuff. So yeah, it was an interesting time. Um, Before we head out, actually, this is a good question that George has. What is the most common reel size you use for your offshore setups?
for kingfish, that Stella I use, which is a little bit overkill, right? But I bought it because I could use it for inshore, offshore, and then deep offshore for like I feel like I can catch close to 100-pound tuna on that reel, right? So I could use it for that, or I could use it for kingfish. It's overkill for kingfish. A 5,000 series would be just fine. Um, I think the Talic 12 or around that range, right? I don't know how you would do that in conventional size. Um, those are good. Once again, mines are a little bit overkill. I got Talica 16 for offshore, but I mean, you don't need really super huge rods and reels for kingfish and snapper inshore. You will need them if you're targeting tuna and bigger like amberjack and stuff in deeper waters. You would need those bigger reels to get into deeper waters and pull them out. Um, Hopefully that answered your question, George.
Yeah. The answer to that is next time I go out with Merrill offshore, I'm going to bring in my 10-foot pen battle with like the battle combo with 8,000 size reel, and that should be just fine. So
Don't bring a 10 foot rod. That's it. You might get lightning or something and hit you.
Well, thanks, Merrill, for talking a lot about offshore. Very informative for me, and I know it's very informative for our listeners. Before we hop off here, definitely want to give another shout out to our sponsors, Knocking Tail Lures. If you're looking for a soft plastic that has a rattle in the tail, to give that extra incentive for fish to bite, definitely look at Knocking Tail Lures. You can find them at knockingtaillures.com. Um, I know flounder season's coming up. Really looking forward to using those. Um, and getting some good flounder this year. Also, 4A printing. Aaron's on here. He's been out for a while, but if you're looking for any custom gear such as towels or the buffs, he can do some custom gear for you. Just reach out to Aaron and look up 4A printing. Also, Dirty South Kayak Anglers, DSKA. If you're looking for a Facebook group to talk kayaking and fishing up and down the Texas coast, search up DSKA or Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook. And of course, Brittany Solesky, Merrill's lovely wife. If you're looking for real estate, either commercial or residential, reach out to her at 281-740-0498 or brittanysolesky@gmail.com. And another shout out to our website. Looking for other content that we have, fishing related content. I'll try to get better about doing blogs because I'm supposed to be doing that. So go to onelastcastpodcast.com. You'll find a bunch of stuff on there. And I think I will end with the kind of the moment. I know I usually let you do it, Merrill, springing on you, but kind of the last word of the day for us is, I know summer is over, but the fishing is only going to get better, and just look forward to the days that you're going to have, because a bad day of fishing is better than any day at work, right? So um thanks guys for listening. Tight lines, and we'll see you out there.